beginning of Super Wildcard Weekend as the Texans kicked it off by beating the Browns 45-14. So, Kevin, I'm going to toss this back to you because there's a man from the Ohio State University that absolutely destroyed the team that hailed from Ohio in this game as the Texans beat the Browns 45-14.
Coleridge Bernard, man, doing his thing. Like Toddy said, if he makes it to the playoffs, wins the division, top 8 quarterback. So I have nothing but love to show to Coleridge Bernard. I thought they were going to struggle this weekend, not having Tank Dale going against this number 1 defense, A, B, C, and D, in all the statistical categories. And it was interesting to kind of just see them plummet on their face. I was happy to see that the Joe Flacco show finally came to an end. The narratives around him were crazy. He's getting all these incentives late in the year. Everyone's comparing it to the Baltimore Ravens run and how they had that defense. And that just goes to show that defense was one of a kind. And I have my own fair share of looking at that memorabilia from that Ravens team, but we'll save that for later on in the Eagles pod. But I have nothing less to say. But CJ Stroud went out there and did his thing. And I was really confident they would get this job done once I kind of saw how the game played out. Joe Flacco with the 2 back-to-back pick sixes, CJ Stroud scoring without even having to come onto the field. So it was a great thing to see, and I'm excited to see what the Texans do next week against the Ravens. I was hoping the Steelers would have just got it out. We got to see CJ go to the AFC Championship game. But it's going to be interesting to see how this defense, plays against Lamar Jackson.
And just to let the record show, Kaz, we have officially sent you an invite, so we are waiting for you to join us, and you are more than welcome. And Kevin, before we pass the mic off to Jaevon, we got a couple of comments that you need to address. First of all, Sway says, Kevin, you good, bro? And he didn't just take a moment to say, are you good on YouTube, but he did on Instagram first. Then he came over here to YouTube just to make sure that you acknowledged his comments. So did you have a response to Sway?
I'm doing well, man. Can't complain. Everyone's texting me in my bed. I've been seeing this for the past 7 weeks. So it's insanity to believe the same thing's going to happen and there'd be a different result. So I'm not insane. So gotta lay in the bed I made.
Now joining us on episode number 75 of Stats Over Politics is, as Kevin would say, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who we just sent an invite, and here he is, none other than Kaz Johnson of Kaz and Garry TV. Kaz, you good?
Let's go, baby! In the build.
Kaz, you are currently muted, so we will hear from you in just a moment.
I was gonna say real quick, my bad, man. I had to hop in here. I couldn't leave my boy Kev hanging, man. Come to face the music. Like Garry said, open the casket, baby. Slide on over, man. Let us
we got
on in,
3.
bro.
It's all good.
We're gonna talk about it though. There's some stuff to talk about though, man.
Oh, there's a lot to talk
We
about.
certainly are going to talk about it. So, Jaevon, I want to get to you next because Khalil was in the YouTube comments coming at you when it comes to this game, as he said, I told y'all CJ the fucking truth, and then he said Toddy in parentheses. So, Jaevon, what's your response to not only Khalil, but also the Texans beating the Browns 45-14?
Well, I kind of always go back to it. I won my first bet on CJ Stroud. This is going back to medieval times. And, when he made his first start at Ohio State, I was like, I knew CJ, they wanted him to throw for 236 yards. And I was like, oh, that's easy. He going to do that. Ends up throwing for about 412 and 4 touchdowns, sets a whole bunch of crazy records at Ohio State. I was like, oh, yeah, he's the truth. But just kind of going back to what Khalil was saying, we were kind of going back and forth. And I even, gave him his props on X. I think it was Saturday, saying that he was right about CJ Stroud. And Bryce Young, that whole situation. Now, I think he's still wrong about the guy who did declare today, the number 1 overall pick, in Caleb Williams. But that's another story for another day. As far as this game goes, I was kind of shocked that, a lot of people were on the Browns. And I was like, CJ's not better? Like, y'all don't think he's better than Joe Flacco? No, Joe Flacco, he's 5-0 in the wild card. And he's been to a Super Bowl. I was like, bro, it's like 10, 15 years ago. Like, what century are we in right now? This is a whole nother, we are in a whole nother path right now. I was like, CJ, his time is now. I don't know if you saw this kind of going back to just the whole entire year. When he is playing quarterback for the Texans, they are an entirely different team. Nico Collins, a lot of people are saying Nico Collins would still be good without CJ. To an extent, that is true. I had to look up when Nico Collins was drafted. He was drafted in 2021, so it's not like this is his first year or second year. He's been in the league. He's got a couple years under his belt. All of a sudden, CJ Stroud, more than capable quarterback, top 8 quarterback, according to this show, comes to Houston and kind of revives the entire city. Now Nico Collins looks like a star. I'm not going to say that that's not because of him. I feel like CJ has a whole lot to do with that. And a lot of people were on, the Browns defense. I was including, us Niner fans, we know about the Browns defense, how good they are. But, Brock Purdy, he was concussed, and that's a whole nother story. Moodied at the end of that game. But for the most part, the Browns have been, I think they were the number 1 team going into this game as far as defensive rating goes. And CJ lit him up. he lit him up. And, Flacco'd. I said on, I think it was the Friday show, during the hotline segment, that Flacco's going to throw picks. He's thrown picks in pretty much every start that he's had for the Browns. And it kind of showed. He had, 2 pick sixes, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that was detrimental to the team for them. And another kind of hats off I want to give to is definitely D'Amico Ryans. Coming from the Shanahan tree, we're starting to see that kind of sprinkle out a little bit. And I want to give it another shout out to Bobby Slowick, the offense coordinator for the Houston Texans, who was scheming up nothing but gems, wide open gems for CJ, and put on a masterclass for the most part. But, shout out to Texan. Houston, you saw there was so much livelihood in Houston. Like, you saw Mike Jones, you saw freaking Paul Wall, and Slim Thug was all together. It just felt like it was 05, and everybody was, kind of reliving the glory days. When things are good in Houston's a really nice city. They have a lot of nice things to go for in that city. And when the Texans are good, the whole city thrives off of it. So shout out to CJ Stroud, man.
Well, Garry, you're obviously a noted Steelers fan, and your division rival, the Browns, they absolutely crumbled in this game. So was it more so about the Texans, or was it the Browns just choking?
So on my notes here, guys, I was, this game was pretty close in the beginning. They were going back and forth, but, I wrote right here, the Browns couldn't really get a stop on the Texans. And then, like Kev mentioned, the second half down by 10, Flacco throws a back-to-back pick sixes. Now you call that a game right there. After that momentum, Houston's rocking and bouncing, you can see. And like also Kev mentioned, CJ, basically they got 2 touchdowns without him even being on the field. So you do that to a great quarterback like that who's up and coming and a great team who has momentum, you can call that a wrap on a playoff day. Turnovers will kill you, as we know, in any game, especially playoff games. And, I don't want to bag too much on Joe Flacco. He always had a magical run here to revitalize these Browns, to get them where they're at today. And, had amazing games to get here, even though he did, it did still have a turnover problem. But, hey, he gunsling his way through to get to this point, help this team, on a backup quarterback role where, their franchise guy we haven't mentioned yet, who should have been playing this game, has been injured for the rest of the year, and Deshaun Watson, and didn't have a great year. So they obviously looked great with him this year. When he picked up the mantle and the baton and, carried them this far. So you got to give him credit. But, at this point, that's why we all picked the Texans. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that we were going to bet in the young buck and CJ Stroud to show his greatness. And he showed up and showed out on this day.
Yeah, I was honestly kind of disappointed that we all picked the Texans, because I thought that I was kind of on that one until I saw the graphic come out, and I was like, well, nope, we all had them. I guess I'm not that smart. Kaz, what did you think? Well, that's true. But Kaz, what did you think about this game as the Texans obviously handled the Browns?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty much expected. Not as bad as it was, but I thought the Texans were going to handle business. I was shocked that entering that game, the Browns were 2-point favors. I didn't get that at all. I don't know what Vegas saw that I didn't see, but I'm like, I get it. Joe Flacco's playing well, but that Browns defense has carried that team the entire season. And we've already seen it happen, I believe, 2 other times where quarterbacks come in, they play well for a couple games, and all of a sudden it's like the luck runs out. It's not likely for, outside of course, Nick Foles, but it's just not likely for a backup to come in and actually to do that, to give you a realistic run. It just doesn't happen. I believe we saw, which I'm not even sure if he's a backup at this time, but Tebow had that crazy run where he had that playoff win. And then after that, he looked like Tim Tebow that we all knew what he was. You have Joe Flacco, played phenomenal, protected the ball, had a few games of putting over 250, 300 yards. And then playoffs, it's a different beast. And the better team won. So not surprised that the Texans won. I did pick the Texans to win that game. I was only shocked that it was by that large of a margin. But what can you do when you throw like 2 pick sixes? It's 2. I'm not really sure what the stat is, but like I'm gonna guess that if there's a quarterback that throws 2 pick sixes in a game,
It's a wrap.
The chances of a team winning after that has got to be so low. It's got to be, and that's without me again not even looking up the stats. So expected the Texans to win. They were at home. The cool thing about that is when you have a team that hasn't really been there, now they have that a little bit of taste of that, that, oh my God, we're here. It's a home playoff game. How long has it been since the Texans have hosted a playoff game? I couldn't even tell you. I might have never have seen it in my life, to be honest. So the Texans are at home. That place was jumping. You got CJ Stroud in at quarterback. We all know who he is. We understood who that guy was last week. And it's just expected. Simple as that. Not surprised.
We've had a lot of changes on StreamYard and a lot of updates. One of the updates is the fact that we can now display comments from X. And shout out to Iz Lee, who says, shout out my boy Kaz and all the rest of y'all. We appreciate you, Lee, who I also saw just gave this stream a shout out on X. So thank you to him. And just to follow up to something you said there, Kaz, Dad Dent says, Purdy's on a solid backup run also. I would just say that was last season, not so much this year because he's the established guy. Trey Lance didn't even get a chance. Anyways, now moving